Now, if these things are true of him, as we know that they are, then there is only one conclusion left to draw, and that is that Christ is exclusively all sufficient. He is exclusively all sufficient. No one, Jesus said, comes to the Father but through me. This statement is Jesus' declaration that he is exclusively all sufficient for sinners. Commentators have done a lot of exegetical gymnastics to try to water down the exclusivity of this statement. One evangelical, which word has sort of lost any significance in our theological climate today, but one evangelical commentator wrote this about this statement in verse 6. This is the opposite of being restrictive or exclusive. Our world hates the exclusive claims of Christ. And there is always the ever-present temptation to try to water that down so we don't offend unbelievers. Jesus is not worried about offending you. No one comes to the Father but through me, he says. Now you can take that statement and you can deal with it. But that's the truth. And this statement is entirely exclusive. There is no other way to God but Christ. There is no other truth but Christ. There is no other life but Christ. Everything outside of Christ is a deceptive counterfeit. And I want you to think about what Jesus is saying here. If there is no way to the Father's presence but Christ, and there is no other truth that can save and sanctify but Christ, and there is no other life outside of Christ, what do you need that Christ doesn't possess? Where are you going to go to get something to solve your problem, to deal with your circumstances, to meet your need, who isn't Christ? What could you possibly need in addition to Christ? He is exclusively all sufficient for our every need in our every circumstance. The disciples' big problem in John 14 was that they feared, with Jesus leaving, that their needs and their circumstances would leave them devastated and destroyed. You see, the disciples had come to realize an important truth. Jesus was exclusively all sufficient for their need in every circumstance. And the fact that he was leaving unsettled them because they had come to depend on him completely for everything. And Jesus reassures them here that his departure should not shake their faith in depending on him for everything, but it should steel it. It should fortify it. It should make it unbendable, unbreakable. Because he is, through his death and resurrection, our all-sufficient Savior who has purchased everything we need on the cross. I love what Paul says in Romans 8. If God did not freely spare his own Son, how will he not with him freely give us all things? What do you need that Christ does not have? Church, there is nothing more than Christ. The world has nothing to give you. Christ is your exclusive, all-sufficient Savior.